And welcome back. LatinoJustice PRLDEF is a national Latino rights, civil rights organization, I should say, that's committed not only to advocating for civil rights, but also increasing the number of Latinos in law school. Their initiatives particularly emphasize the journeys of women and mothers who challenge societal norms, overcome obstacles, and lead the way towards a more inclusive legal profession. Now, according to the American Bar Association, women now outnumber men in law schools, demonstrating a 13.4% increase. Here now, Latino Justice's director of the CAP Leadership Institute, Lydiette Diaz, and CLASP Program Alumni, Dennisse Calle. And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for having
Daren.
us.
Thank you. And when we talk about Latinos in law school, obviously, one of the initiatives is to really increase that. What are we seeing right now when it comes to law school and Latinos?
While we're seeing better numbers, the increase is not significant enough, and we're also not seeing Latinos rising up the corporate ladder. So for us, the pipeline programs continue to be really important, and especially as a result of the Supreme Court case on affirmative action. There is a sentiment that the number of Latinos in undergraduate institutions are going to go down, and therefore also in law school, you're going to see that number decrease. And so we're just, plugging along and doing our job and continuing to bring these programs to the Latino community and folks that are underrepresented.
And when we talk about that underrepresentation, obviously that's huge. That could be that can fall out in a variety of different ways. By not seeing people of Latino descent in law, what does that mean for community, and what does that mean in the overall grand scheme of things?
I think overall, it makes it harder to visualize yourself as an attorney. It makes it harder to visualize yourself as an attorney in a corporate space. Um, Not having anyone to guide you, to mentor you, and to just provide the like little tidbits of information that you get when you know someone who is an attorney. And I think class has really been essential in providing that and providing mentorship and connecting like the small amount of Latinos that there are, connecting them with like younger Latinos to continue mentoring them.
Yeah. And, Lydia, ask you this question because exposure makes a whole lot of difference. And when you have exposure and your organization does a great job of providing that, what does it mean in the lives of students to be able to get this level of exposure?
It means so much. And we start young. Our first program in our pipeline is called the Next Generation Líderes Mentorship Program. And it targets students as young as juniors and seniors in high school. And for them to be able to visualize, see, get in touch with, ask questions in a setting that is intimate and allows for vulnerability and also genuine responses, authenticity makes a huge difference. We're seeing them, come back program after program, build relationships and rapport with staff, but also our external stakeholders that serve as mentors and panelists to be able to guide these students as they continue on this pipeline, whether it ends up being in law or in a different professional space. But it just makes a huge difference. We get emails years later. If it wasn't for your program, I wouldn't be an attorney today. If it wasn't, and this dates back to the inception of the organization. The organization was founded in 1972 and has always had education as part of its mission. And we run into attorneys all the time that say, had it not been for your LSAT prep program, had it not been for the scholarship program that y'all had, I wouldn't be an attorney. And even for me serving in this role over the last 3 years, I get emails. Had it not been for my mentor, I wouldn't have understood the application process. I wouldn't have understood the different possibilities and the different ways to practice law. So really, it is an invaluable resource.
Yeah. Dennisse, when you talk about being that student now, law, and also working in law, there's a lot of juggling that goes on, right? And I mean, obviously, the balance is there. You got to create a plentiful balance between work and life. And talk to me about that and, really the balances that you've had to deal with coming up.
I think to give you some background, so I applied to law school with a 6 week old baby. Um, and I started law school with a 6 month old baby. Now that baby is 4, about to be 5 years old, and I'm working as a first year in a big law firm, Oric. Um, and balance is crucial. I mean, I think some of the other first years are surprised at like waking up at 5 in the morning. And I think when you have a baby, if you have one, you know, like 5 in the morning, that's normal, right? That's like the newborn's time to wake up. So I think in some ways, like having a baby young has instilled like a routine and a schedule for me. I will say it's challenging now because my schedule is unpredictable. And when you start off at this like first year, you don't have control over your time. So one of the biggest things for me is having a support system and having my family. For example, like I had a 3 day all nighter, and I was like sitting next to my son having dinner. So you just kind of balance it. I think a lot of moms and all moms that I know will tell you, um, we just make it happen. We make it happen under whatever circumstance with whatever resources we have at hand.
Yeah. And Lydia, women in law are really making a huge impact. I mean, I think when we look at society right now, a long way we've come, but honestly, still a long way that remains ahead.
I think that's right. What we're seeing in our programs is more and more women, Latinas, seeking these resources. They're not afraid to go for, this ultimate dream that they've always had. We have had, adult women come and say, look, I put this dream off aside to really prioritize my children, my family, and the things that I needed to do. But now this is something that I've always wanted to do and coming back to it. We're also seeing, young moms that say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to have the baby. I'm going to have the family, and I'm going to have this legal career. And so we are seeing a spectrum of students that are coming to our programs and seeking these resources. And we are here. We are here to help and assist, and continue to push that trajectory and to push the conversation, and to really, anything is possible.
Right. As an enter into the legal field, everybody knows it's going to be, quite intense. There's going to be a lot of hours. I think Dennisse has already, pointed to the fact of, the family time that's involved and, having not much time, but then still incorporating family right there in the dynamic. In order to navigate something like this, mentorship is very key and very critical. I first want to talk to you, Lydiette, and I'll come back to Dennisse in a minute. But I want to ask about that point of mentorship because, it can be make or break for a lot of people without mentorship. So looking at Latinos in law, the power of mentorship. I'll let you answer.
Yeah, I mean, mentorship is crucial at every stage, is what I would say, which is why that first program we have starts as young as juniors and seniors in high school. The reality is that there's still not a whole lot of Latinos or people of color in the field. And so when you're looking at it, like Dennisse shared earlier, and you don't see yourself, it's hard, right? It feels like an obstacle, a challenge. Oh, this is something that's not done. Can I do this? Maybe I can't do this, right? On top of financing law school, the LSAT, those prep programs are really expensive. And so the challenges are there. And then we have, again, Latinos and people who are underrepresented being first generation into the field, and they don't have the resources. They don't know the jargon. Law school is very different than undergraduate studies. So the way that you study, the way that you prep, the way that you show up to class, the way a class is run is very different. So we also have this program for 1Ls called How to Succeed in Law School. It's a one-day workshop, but it gives them that skill set, how to case brief, how to outline, what is the language and terminology that you need to have as you are approaching law school. Then we have that CLASP program that Dennisse did, that again is about access, where we partner with Fortune 500 companies and top firms to create, an avenue for students that may not necessarily have had that avenue to get into these fields. And then we have our Líderes Young Professionals Board. So really the mentorship that we have is across that trajectory from as young as juniors and seniors in high school, all the way to practicing attorneys and practicing professionals who still need that mentorship and that allyship in the field, so that they are aware of obstacles and challenges, how to overcome them, the networking that comes from it. And so it goes back again to something that we mentioned earlier, exposure, right?
Right.
And so we try to do that all through the pipeline.
And Dennisse, for you, how important was it to have a mentor in this process? I mean, obviously a lot to contend with, but the power of mentorship for you?
I think it was like pivotal for me getting this job. Rochelle literally spent several nights with me interviewing, we practiced again and again and again. We practiced our questions, we practiced what would be asked. Like, the amount of time that she put into me preparing for this interview was even looking at where was I sitting, how was the interview going to look to the interviewee. And I think honestly, I don't the insight that she had, I would not have had at that stage. And she already worked here. She already worked at org. She knew the people that I was going to interview and had a sense of like the questions that I was going to be asked. And I'm eternally grateful for all the time that she's given me. And and in the grand scheme of things, it hasn't been over years. It was just like a focused period of mentorship that made a difference for me.
Yeah. I want to look at some gender disparities when it comes to the legal profession and take a look at it here. Latinos make up about 19% of total U.S. population, but only 4.8% of practicing attorneys and 6.6% of federal judges. And when we talk about that, that's a very startling statistic to see that only 6.6% of that 19 are actually hitting the bench.
That's exactly right. And you see that across the board, across field in the legal field. You see it, in partners when you look at firms and partners, but you see it, like I said, across the field. And so we continue to do this work because it continues to be important. And the other thing, Daren, that I would elevate is that the Latino population is only going to continue to grow.
Right.
It's going to be greater than that 19%, right? And we're not seeing the same increased rate into folks that are going into the profession. So we need to really take a look at what those obstacles, challenges, and barriers are, and how we are working to dismantle them, so that the playing field becomes equitable and accessible.
Well, Lydiette, I think you have a great program, and I think that people really need to be exposed to that and really take advantage of the opportunities that are right there in front of them to help to advance them in such, it's a very adventurous and it's a very profitable profession, but yet and still, there's still some challenges. And sometimes people say, listen, I'm not going to get into this because I'm so worried about the time constraint. I'm so worried about the study. I'm so worried about having the support and the mentorship that I actually would need in order to make that. But you guys do that so well. Let me ask about somebody who might potentially be watching right now and saying, I want to be a part. I want to take advantage of this opportunity. I think maybe I'll cross the border and, literally go here in this area of law. Talk to me about that. How do they get in?
So Daren, they can go to our website at LatinoJustice.org, where we have the CAP Leadership Institute page that lists all of our programs. I will highlight that, the pandemic caused us to rethink how we bring about programming. And so a lot of our programs are hybrid. We offer webinars, so folks that are not in the tri-state area, can join us for programming. We also have in-person programming. Like I mentioned, we have the mentorship program. We have a Lawbound Academy, which is for students that are a little bit closer to the application process. We have Law Day, which is a law school fair, which we host typically in the city in the fall. And so we have all kinds of events. Certainly follow us on social media, sign up for our newsletter. You can find me on LinkedIn. I will post our programs as they're coming up. So there's definitely different ways to find us and get involved.
Yeah. And for the summer, I know that you got some things happening. So I do want to get a chance to let you talk a little bit about the summer.
Yes. So our next panel that we have coming up is a webinar focused on folks that are interested in being paralegals. And that's scheduled for June 10th. Then, like I said, we will have the How to Succeed in Law School workshop in July. We will also have an alumni event in July. And then our summer Lawbound program, the application is open, and that takes place July 29th through August 2nd. So we do have a lot of programming that's coming down the pipe. And we do a monthly webinar for the NGL. So again, if you follow us at LatinoJustice.org and you follow us on social media, you'll see all of the monthly webinars that we put together.
Yeah. Dennisse, coming along, what was the biggest challenge so far in the journey?
What a good question. I think it's really more of a mental challenge, and I think that's why class is so important. But it's really having the mental fortitude, because you can learn how to study, you can learn the jargon, you can learn and understand what's going on. But I think having the mental fortitude of I can do this, like I'm not alone. I like overcoming imposter syndrome, and and that's why I think community is so important. Like mentorship is really tied to this like idea that you're welcomed into this community. Uh, so I would say, you know, please reach out to CLASP. Please find like other people who will encourage you, because if you have that mental fortitude, you have all the other things that can happen. We can make happen.
Yeah. And what was your favorite part for within this journey? What's been the favorite part for you?
I think my favorite part has been learning. Honestly, my favorite class and my favorite part was constitutional law. Um, just like understanding how do we create big ideas and how do we change society. I think the law is a language, and you know, I grew up bilingual and translating, and I think the law is a way to translate into new fields. So yeah, I've loved it so far.
Yeah. So Lydiette, again, we're going to give people an opportunity, those who've been watching throughout the course of this segment, to have a chance to connect. And so for people who want to get connected with LatinoJustice, how do they go ahead and do that?
LatinoJustice.org. We are on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me, Lydiette Diaz. I'm not difficult to find with a name like that. And certainly signing up for our newsletter.
Yeah. And as we continue to study and find out more about how we're moving as a society, one of the things that we can definitely say is that there is a need for greater diversity, and there is a need for inclusion when it comes to the area of law, particularly minorities, and in this segment, talking about Latinos in justice. And thank you so much for being with us, both Lydiette and then Dennisse, and we got to have you back.
Thank you.
Sounds good, Daren. Thank you so much.
All righty, you take care.
Take care.
All righty. Well, listen, we are taking a quick break, but guess what? We'll have more coming back right after this.